Hey everyone, and welcome to Private Podcast, where we plug in and explore the intersection of privacy, human rights, technology, and democracy. I'm your host, Derek E. Silva. Today we're speaking with Gian Volpicelli. Gian is a senior editor at Wired UK, where he co-edits the Start section of the magazine and writes and edits stories about cryptocurrency, technology regulation, and digital politics. His first book, Cryptocurrency: How Digital Money Could Transform Finance, was published just this past July 2021. Before joining Wired UK, he covered technology as a freelancer for outlets including The Guardian, Ars Technica, and Motherboard, among others. It's quite the resume. Gian, thanks for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks. How are you?
Good. I cannot complain.
And if you do, nobody listens anyway.
Good. I will keep complaints to a minimum.
That's fine. No, I think this is actually one of the few places where people are actually do want to hear the complaints, and hopefully some solutions to those complaints. So
Okay.
maybe this is one of those few venues. I will say up front, I am a Wired subscriber.
Ace.
I don't know if that's like super important to people, but like I do
No,
have a
it's very
Wired
important to
magazine subscription.
our board of directors. So thank you very
It's
much.
it's important to Condé Nast. Yeah, I guess it's important to them, but I don't know. It's over full disclosure maybe, but no, that's great. I did, and I was reading a bunch of your recent articles about El Salvador and China's 19th ban on cryptocurrencies, and
Mhm.
we'll dive into that. But before that, I want to get a little into your background a little bit, and what led you to writing and editing stories. Based on what I saw on Muckrack, very focused on all these super important topics right now: cryptocurrencies, privacy, surveillance, that sort of thing.
I think that in general, I come from a political science perspective, and that's what I studied. I studied political
Hmm.
science, even if I was always pretty much attracted by the technical side of it, how technology and science change uh, politics, right? How very stupidly, but just how the atomic bomb, for instance, changed the way American presidents behaved, something like that, or even just the drone war. I remember that one of the first big stories that sort of convinced me I wanted to be a journalist covering these kind of topics was, I think, the Washington Post and the New York Times reporting, and the Intercept's reporting too, on Obama's drone campaign.
Hmm.
So all that kind of how technology impacts politics, and so I just started from there, and that leads in all kind of interesting directions. One direction is, of course, possibly cryptocurrency, because I regard cryptocurrency as a political project at its core. It is really about inventing a different kind of not only monetary system but also political community, if you wish. Bitcoin specifically about banking, but if you look at second generation or third generation blockchain projects and cryptocurrency projects, they are about much more than that. They want to decentralize essentially everything, right? They want
Hmm.
almost to eliminate politics, and they want to transform it into automated routines. Of course, there is a lot of debate right now about whether off-chain governance should also be involved. It is, but
Yeah.
that's essentially how it started. And also, in general, I looked at all the ways in which governments were working with and working against technologies. Chief among these technologies, of course, might be a bit reductive to call it just a technology, but I'm very interested in the kind of power struggle between governments and the internet. So when it comes
Mm.
to censorship, when it comes to surveillance, when it comes to fighting against platforms to have them enforce stricter controls on their own platforms, or when the UK, for instance, is even just pondering the idea of introducing some kind of restrictions on messaging apps in order to
Hmm.
police for harmful content. That's something that really fascinates me, uh, just because that's how I started looking into the topic.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Like I guess your career focus, it has come. I guess maybe that was around 10 years ago, with the drone strikes, maybe a little bit more, 2008. Yeah, 2000, maybe 2009,
It
2010.
was 20, yeah.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, so I certainly remember that, and I got really interested, and this is kind of a crappy way to end up interested in this topic, but interested in geopolitics and that sort of thing, because I was a 9 or 10-year-old kid watching CNN, watching the Americans bomb the crap out of Iraq.
Right.
And it literally live footage. Like I could come home from school and see Wolf Blitzer talking about what's happening in this campaign to get this march towards Baghdad, and then all of a sudden we switch to some embedded journalist or maybe a U.S. Army camera, literally rockets firing in
Right.
the
Yeah.
night,
Yeah.
and I'm like, this is interesting and heartbreaking and like all these mixed emotions, and it just led me to spend a lot of time reading the news and watching international news stories and that sort of thing for decades after that. It's not something I focus on too much right now, but I've had to come back to intergovernmental and corporate crackdowns and that sort of thing because of working in blockchain and cryptocurrency space full time for approaching 4 years. But no, that's really interesting.
Mhm.
Your book that you released this summer. I'll say the title again for anybody who's interested: Cryptocurrency: How Digital Money Could Transform Finance. Can you tell
Yeah.
us, like,
Not a
obviously
great
the
title, I have to
focus?
admit.
Well, I was gonna say the focus of the book, I think, is more or less in the title or the subtitle. But like, how did that book come about? Why did you want to write it?
Right.
How has it been received?
No, well, the way it came about it was simply that Wired was thinking of releasing a series of guides about big technical topics that our readers, or maybe people who were not our readers but would like to be our readers, were potentially interested in. So quantum computing, future of food, future of
Mm,
medicine, climate change and how to respond to it, and cryptocurrency. And I was essentially the Wired UK resident crypto head, if you wish. And so I volunteered to write it. Uh, they, I think it has been well received from what I can tell. I have only received praise, and but that doesn't mean that the people hating it are not just staying silent. Uh, uh, I think that what I try to do, as you said, I think the title is more indicative of the actual content than the subtitle is, because I actually tried to expand on what we just discussed. I wanted to retell the story of cryptocurrency as a political project and various waves of political ambitions, from Bitcoin to Ethereum, and then also to Libra, if you wish, right? When actually Silicon Valley tries to uh, become a money printer, a
yeah,
money issuer, and that's also deeply political. So much so that actually now Libra, or DM, or whatever you want to call it, is
yeah.
dead in the water, and governments are trying
Seems
to
that
issue
way.
their CBDCs. And the chief, one of the chief cryptographers from Libra, just left to join a privacy company. So that's essentially my perspective. I think it's an intellectual history of cryptocurrency, a political history of cryptocurrency, written for the layperson. So you probably find it pretty boring. But
My dad might
whoever
not
wants,
though. Like
well,
he
I'll
always
send you a
tells me,
copy if you want to have
no,
one.
no, no, please, no, no. I will happily pay in addition to my Wired subscription for good content. That's fine.
Great,
I'm
that's
finally at
amazing.
that point in my life where I don't feel like I need to pirate everything. So
Okay, wonderful. I was actually checking whether it was pirated on some of the platforms I use to get pirated books. Oops. And I couldn't find it. So that sort of told me that the popularity is not that high yet. But anyway, no, yeah, that's essentially it. It was an intellectual history of crypto from the very beginnings, actually, from even before Bitcoin, from the cypherpunk movement
mhm.
to Libra and the digital yuan, which is not crypto. It's like it's denial. It's subversion,
Yeah,
but still, it
it
is in the book.
it it might be distributed ledger technology. It's definitely not a cryptocurrency.
No, no.
And actually, well, this was a part of your article that you wrote, I think, or published a couple of weeks ago, was that even if you did consider it a cryptocurrency, it doesn't have all the decentralization and privacy benefits
Yeah.
that something like even USDC, although the smart contract contains a blacklist, same with USDT, um, those are definitely cryptocurrencies, stable, pegged to another third party value. But regardless, it's not. Yeah, the digital yuan is certainly not the same as USDC, USDT, same coin, MUSD from MStable, all these other US dollar pegged currencies. So
No, no,
yeah,
it's
it's
literally a
very, very different.
surveillance tool, possibly. We imagine it's going to be
Possibly.
a surveillance tool, right? But yeah, I mean, it's just the total reversal of what crypto was supposed to be. It keeps possibly the convenience and possibly increases that. It might be
Sure.
even quicker. It very likely would be as quick as lightning, if not quicker than that, at payments. But all the political rationale for adopting cryptocurrencies have been removed. You just have a husk.
Yeah, I if you live in China and you're totally fine with the government as is, you'll probably love the digital yuan.
Oh, yeah.
It'll probably be fast. It's probably running on, if it's running on proof of anything, it's probably proof of stake or proof of authority or something like that, right? With a few nodes running across the country. At worst, it's really just Visa or Mastercard,
Yeah,
with
it's
a
Chinese
centralized
visa, right?
database and and a cryptocurrency, quote unquote. Um, but yeah, it's it
I
is what it
suppose it would
is.
be some kind of convenience in terms of bank fees. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
we won't pay any commercial bank for that. But I'm not even sure about that. There might be hidden fees there. Anyway, so yeah, the
the
digital
hidden fee
yuan
is your
is
privacy, just like
yeah, that's a
it's
major
the
one.
hidden cost of using Facebook or Google. It's your privacy.
Yeah. I just wonder whether we are, well, not we, I mean, whether some people are right or not regarding it being essentially a geopolitical move as opposed to just a domestic move. Like it's going to be the reserve currency of the world, and the US should just hurry up and launch its digital dollar in order to face up that challenge. I'm not totally sure, but that seems to be the narrative coming from very high places like the Atlantic Council. Uh, so I wonder what we're going to see about that side of it. Not really the internal, but the uh, international and geopolitical. And I suppose that what one should be looking out for is whatever happens during the Winter Games,
Hmm.
the Olympics, right? In 2022, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken, when
February.
foreigners will be given access to the digital one for the first time.
I think, and right before this episode comes out, there should be one with Jeremy Goldkorn from Sup China, who lives and breathes Chinese news, and he and I both agreed that pretty much everything China does these days is a geopolitical move. Certainly, the Belt and Road Initiative, and I think the digital yuan is right along that same path where the Chinese lend out all this money, they build all this infrastructure. In some cases, it's super predatory terms, and they actually take over the infrastructure, like ports in Africa, because Botswana, or that might be a landlocked country. I'm just trying to. Madagascar, might be strapped for cash and can't pay the loan, and all of a sudden, a Chinese state-owned firm or state-operated firm owns a port, a super strategic port in, along a major thoroughfare. Just using random example or random locations at this point
No, yeah,
in my
absolutely. Let's
example,
not delve into geography.
but I think the digital yuan is like the next phase of that sort of thing where they want. I'm very confident the Communist Party of China wants to replace the U.S. dollar in whatever form as the reserve, and so this is a great way to do it, to test it at home, make sure people at home really like it. Oh, the world is coming here in February 2022. Let's make sure it's available for them, and at least a certain segment of the population who goes to China for the games, for the February 2022 Olympic Games, or Winter 2022 Olympic Games. and then goes home a fan of this app and this technology and what have you, and like, hey, maybe we should use it. And either you're tapping into Chinese tech firms to help you build it, and therefore the Chinese economy benefits. And I'm willing to bet that a lot of the exchange, fiat exchange pairs in that app, whatever you get, will include CNY or DCNY for digital yuan, or DNY, or whatever they
Yeah,
end up calling it,
yeah,
the
many
ticker.
many names.
Yeah, yeah. So,
What I found interesting
that's
from the American side was that there was this speech by one of the vice directors of the Fed, saying essentially that the US would better uh, throw its weight in a way behind a private stablecoin, digital
an existing
dollar,
one. Yeah.
as opposed to building one itself. So in a way, even if a lot of people thought that Libra was dead, that Libra, the easiest way for Libra to pull it off, for Facebook to pull Libra off, would be to rebrand as a digital dollar, and that's good. And
which
do make the
which I
case
think
they are
DM
making, right?
basically is,
Yeah,
right? Like
then it's going to be a sort of
DM
CBDC platform,
Libra
right?
Foundation. Um, yes. My only concern there would be, I don't know what they're doing, and
Yeah, nobody
I
knows.
don't know that they're doing much, DM Association. So whereas um, uh, Circle already operates USDC,
Mm-hmm.
Tether seems to be doing just fine against the
Mm,
state of New York right now in their legal wranglings. If they can come out of that relatively unscathed, um, potentially they could turn things around a little bit, offer a little bit more transparency, actually capitalize properly if they're not
mm,
already, and potentially be a partner. Like, there's True USD, there's USDC, there's USDT, which all of which are at least partially backed by US dollars,
yeah,
if not completely
at
backed by
least
US
partially.
dollars.
There's a lot of work there.
Agreed. Yeah, and that's really a tether issue. But
Yeah,
regardless, at least a perception of tether. Um, and yeah, for me, it's just like, these options already exist, and they exist on multiple blockchains already.
yeah, yeah.
They're not all living on Ethereum. They're living on Solana and Polkadot, and a lot of these newer, recently launched, but newer and cheaper to use blockchains. Ripple's distributed ledger, that's not a blockchain.
Mm,
Stellar's, uh, uh, I'm pretty sure that's a blockchain, or a DAG, which I forget what that stands for, but it's very similar. And you can actually, the U.S. government could actually bring millions of millions, maybe billions of dollars in supply to 5, 6, 10 blockchains, and let people move them around, and ultimately, either engage with if they wanted to have some visibility, engage with a firm like Chainalysis or something like that, to
mm,
just keep track of what's going on, at least at
mm.
a high level. And if um if they identify some potentially shady behavior, go after the shady behavior, just like you do with any crime,
Right.
as opposed to operating only a CBDC and having government sponsored wallet software or whatever, which goes right back to the Chinese issue. And you miss a lot of these potential benefits. You miss a lot of portability. You miss out on opportunity to turn that money into something that's earning you 10 or 20% per year. I won't go after the crazy 2,000% yield farming. That ends really quickly, and those tokens almost inevitably burn in hell. But the my problem, I think, with some of the government approaches right now is like, we're protecting you. Well, then I want less protection, because you're
Right.
literally preventing me from putting my money somewhere that at least beats inflation.
Yeah,
And
yeah. That's a very
uh,
traditional kind of conception of crypto, right? Almost old school today. But it's
yeah,
back. It's
sure.
back.
Yeah, well, but like, I have no problem with yield farming, and I don't have a problem with people who just want to speculate on very volatile tokens. But for the next billion or 2 billion people who want access, but can't afford $30 gas fees or $100 gas fees on Ethereum, give them another option. And if you want to keep track of things, you're a government. You can do whatever you want, pretty much. And if you can't, you can legalize it. But still give people the choice. And that's, I think, what a lot of people are lacking now is the choice to get into something that they're fairly confident is not going to crash and burn, is subject to decentralized governance, which I want to come back to in a minute here, and and not play with things that are super super volatile. Like there's a way to do that, and there's lots of options there. But
I just worry that, I mean, no, I don't worry, I don't really care. But what I seem to understand, speaking with policy people in the US, is that they just so much fragmentation. It's not clear whether the right hand knows what the left hand does, and so the Fed thinks one thing, the SEC is doing something else, the government
yeah,
is
the CFTC has
running
somebody
around
who's
like
super
a
bullish.
yeah, exactly. It's even within the Democratic Party, there are so many kind of schools of thought, right? So you really need a unitary, strong, vision endowed person who says, well, let's lay down the law of the land. But right
Yeah.
now, it doesn't really look like it's going to happen for a while. Maybe it will, hopefully. But the situation right now is it's a little like Byzantium, right? Like there's all these little generals, each making a different
Yeah.
decision. Byzantium.
We'll talk about Byzantium general's problem.
Yeah,
It's happening right in front of us.
Yeah, in a more sort of practical way, right? Really, just a fragmentation of power with different satraps and different stuff.
Yeah, yeah. All right, we should probably move on to new topic.
Yeah.
Uh, you mentioned decentralized governance earlier, and I don't know if you're up to speed on all the different platforms and their different approaches, but
Partly.
Kane Warwick, who is one of the founders of Synthetics, a synthetic liquidity derivatives platform. I do not use. I'll say that. I don't like derivatives personally, but lots of people do. They want to either speculate on it or Synthetics has their decentralized governance system that they've created on their own, a whole piece of software to back it. Kane Warwick was actually talking about all at Token 2049 in London this week.
Oh yeah,
was talking about how
I was there
decentralized
like
governance
1 minute ago.
Oh, perfect. So, I think yesterday, because I was reading this on Decrypt this morning,
Okay.
said that basically decentralized governance sucks, or at least the systems in place to manage it are suck. You got people who are part of multi-sig wallets and all these Telegram messages or Discord messages reminding people to that they need to go approve a transaction because we need 3 out of 5 or 6 out of 10 or whatever to execute something. And of course, even just the voting mechanism and notifying people that there's a vote up, whether it's Snapshot or Aragon or what have you, can be really, really cumbersome. So apparently they're building this whole new thing that they're going to open source. But how do you, what's your sense right now of decentralized governance, and if you have any, or, do you think anybody on the planet, besides people who are super into this full time, if they're even ready for I think what a lot of people, what they might call like a liquid democracy, like people say they want to have, they want to vote on more things. But then, of course, in many countries, 40% of eligible voters actually show up. So are we actually ready for this sort of thing? And do you have an opinion on the
sense,
state
right?
of decentralized governance right now?
I don't know. The answer is I don't know. But I think I read that pretty illuminating piece by Vitalik about going beyond coin governance, which is coin-based governance, which is in a way about this, right? Not about all of this, but about a big chunk of it. And what you said is very interesting because, for instance, in Italy, there is this running joke that people can either go to vote or go to the seaside, to the beach. And a lot of people decide to go to the beach, and that's very nice. It's even nicer if you don't vote and you just earn, you farm yield instead of voting, instead of using your. So it's a similar thing. People always prefer to go to the beach, and
Yeah.
when you earn money, if you don't vote, It's even better than going to the beach, you know. So
Because you're still
I'm not
earning it,
sure.
regardless of your decision to not vote. Yeah.
Yeah. So in a way, yeah, I think it strikes at a fundamental problem of human nature, which I think, in a way, very often on a large scale, personal convenience and just laziness win over engaging with a community and with wanting to be part of a governing process. Um, I'm not totally sure that when it comes to, yeah, I'm not totally sure that we can use kind governance without ending up with the problems outlined in that essay, right? There would be always be plutocracy, apathy on the part of people who just don't want to vote or don't care about
Mm-hmm.
voting, just there for the loans or for the yield farms, farm yield, or whatever. And and also there's always concentration. I wonder. There must be a way. Vitalik outlined some solutions such as skin in the game or easy forking, easier forking.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I just tend to think that there will always be a big deal of off-chain governance, which is bad in a way because it tends to be unstructured, it tends to be a bit elitist, and there is the
Opaque.
so-called opaque, and the lack of structure. I was talking with Emin Gunsira about it almost 1 year ago, and he said something like, when there is no formal structure, that's very bad because you end up with the tyranny of structurelessness. You don't know where to go or who to ask in order to get something done or in order to make a case for some change. It just becomes all
Yeah.
about personal relationships, right? So of course
Right. Right.
now, if you want to get something done in Ethereum, very like I mean I'm being both cynical and banal here, but it's much easier if you know Vitalik very well, because
Or Tim
you if
Bako,
you
or yeah,
or
somebody
several
very high up in the developer
exactly.
ecosystem. Yeah.
Even if there's no like formal structure or not very
Right.
formalized or not very rigid structure, and there's been no real discussion of it. So I come back to my initial answer, which is I don't know, but it is interesting and it's good that it's good in general for the sake of intellectual um, experiments that people are finally realizing it, and that very often beach going will win over poll casting, ballot casting.
So on the one hand, you might be able to do both and just vote from your phone, right? Like you can if you have MetaMask Mobile or Trust Wallet or Coinbase Wallet, it's something with ideally something with a built-in browser because it's super easy then, or worst case scenario, something that supports Wallet Connect. You can literally do it from your phone while you're at the beach. You just have to make sure you
Yeah,
do it by the deadline.
yeah. I was talking about metaphorical beach there. Don't give my allegories.
All right,
My
fine, fine. I
alleg.
take my phone to the beach because I'm like
It's
constantly working, but I try not to check it when I'm at the beach.
I don't like the beach. That's why I'm in London. And it was a stay in Italy, right?
Well, then you should have came here to southwestern Ontario, and I could live wherever you lived in Italy, and I'd go to the beach every
Rome,
day.
very close to the beach, even if it's not a great beach. Anyway, sorry, yeah, we're getting sort of derailed here.
But that's a whole other podcast. It's called Private Beaches. No, I'm just joking. Um, instead of private technology. Uh,
I don't know. What
going.
do
Oh,
you
I
think
mean,
about it, though? What do you
oh,
think about
so
decentralized governance? Because I
I
wasn't
think.
really. I was just faffing about, really. I'm sure
Yeah,
you have
no,
a
that's
much
fine.
more organic point of view.
You're the guest, so that's totally fine. Honestly, I think we're going to end up in almost exactly the same situation we have with governance systems right now, which
Mm.
is and synthetics is kind of already here. M stable is headed in this direction. Gitcoin is already here with whether you call them protocol politicians or delegatees or stewards or what have you. I think most people are going to, not in a structured every 4 years kind of way, but they're essentially going to put their vote behind somebody else who's actually paying attention day to day.
Like a party, essentially. Right? It's like voting for a
Without the
party.
parties, yeah, without
Well,
social democrats or labor or republican parties or anything like that, because I think just about everybody in crypto right now has at least a little bit of libertarianism in them. So I don't think a party structure would benefit. But um, I think it'd be more like a municipal election here in Ontario where there are no parties.
Mm.
Yes, if you talk to somebody long enough, you could probably figure out,
What they
what
think.
more or less how they vote at the provincial or the federal level. Fine, but there's no party affiliation. So Gitcoin has their stewards. The first bunch they appointed, but are very well respected people in the cryptocurrency space, um, who have very ideal altruistic goals for blockchain technology and the systems that we can build on it. And MStable is taking, or at least last I checked on their forum, is taking nominations for delegatees. The Spartan Council, people I think, have to nominate themselves and go through a process and get voted on to or off of the Spartan Council. Like I said, I'm not intimately familiar with synthetics, but I know they have a system like that, something like that, and I think that's ultimately what we're going to end up with, because people don't want to pay attention. I'm not convinced that people actually want to vote more often.
No, no,
If
no.
that was the
Yeah.
case, Americans get to vote on just about everything: sheriff, bailiff, judges, mayors, city councilors, etc. And they have the same problem that America
Dog
has, or
catcher,
that Canada has: dog catchers.
right?
you know,
I think it is
your
actually an
the
elected
daycare
position.
provider at your school. Like, they it feels like they vote on just about everything, and every 2 years. And yet they have the similar get out the vote problems Canada does, and I think the UK does, and France does. Like, there's definitely I think part of because of the party system and because of first past the post voting structure. If I vote for this really tiny party, it's going to go nowhere. If there was ranked ballots, I personally think that would help a lot. But
Mm.
I'm still not convinced that people actually want to vote on everything that happens at a governance level.
Especially when they come from a libertarian background, right? Because libertarian is also a liberty not to be bothered with voting decisions.
Right. Yeah. Just put the minimum systems in place, to protect my life if things go really badly, and and I'll pay for those through taxes. Like, that's I know some great small L libertarians who are fine with taxes, fine with a government existing. They just don't want them getting involved in the bedroom, which some people who say they're all for liberty, disagree otherwise on that last part.
We
Um,
ended up in politics again. You see, it's all about politics.
it it does end up all being about governance, which can be about politics. I try to
Yes, yes.
separate politics and policy, because the politics is where people just snipe at each other and they draw themselves along like super hard lines in the sand at the beach that they don't want to cross, and I don't think that benefits anybody.
No,
Whereas if
absolutely.
people can actually agree on a policy that they think will accomplish the goal, great. Like, that's for me, that's what's better, and that's one of the things that I like about municipal politics
Mhm.
here, is that there are no parties, at least not officially. And so, London, Ontario, you have 14 city councilors plus a mayor, and you just need 8 votes out of 15 in order to pass something. um, my municipal council, you have 5 councilors, a deputy mayor, and a mayor to make sure we have an odd number, and you need 4 to 7 votes to pass something. Like, there's no, some of the things that I thought very much would happen along a certain 4-3 split vote, didn't. And I think that's one of the nice things, is you can actually get to somebody directly, talk to them as a person, and get them to understand your proposal or what have you. But anyway, yeah, I think decentralized governance it'll end up looking something like the Spartan Council or Gitcoin stewards, where every once in a while I'll evaluate the person I've put my tokens behind, my votes,
Mhm.
and see, like, how have they voted on the last 3 or 4 things. Oh, I disagree with 3 out of those 4 votes. I'm gonna evaluate some other people and put my voting power behind one of them instead. and or split that and put it behind two other people or what have you. But I'll do that whenever I feel like it, as opposed to having to think like, oh, every 4 years I got to pay attention to politics again. And it could be a monthly thing, it could be a quarterly thing, it could be an annual thing. Just whenever I think like, oh, Gitcoin seems to be going in a really weird direction, I can reevaluate where my voting power is and reallocate it like that, instead of having to wait for an election cycle. So, or if somebody new comes along, as a new steward, they nominate themselves, I can evaluate them and maybe say, oh, like, perfect. Finally, I finally found that person who I agree with 99% of the time or 100% of the time, and reallocate it then, and just on the fly.
Right.
But
Well,
I don't know if that'll
so,
work. That might end up with tons of inertia too. Like, oh, this person just always has lots of delegates.
so they don't want to
Um,
vote either. Yeah.
it's a
I
hard problem.
think there will be some steps ahead. That there will be some advance there. The fact that Vitalik is getting interested in this tells me that some change will probably come. I would be interested in hearing what the position of people like Glenn Weil are, from Glenn Weil from the Radical Exchange organization, which Vitalik seems to be very keen on some of the analysis
Hmm.
they make there. But I
I
haven't
think
actually read.
they. Go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't really read what they think about the current debate. I'm sure they have a position which is very well articulated and laid out in white papers or whatnot.
Well, like they I think a lot of at least two of Gitcoin's principles that they use come from organizations like this, quadratic voting and quadratic funding.
Yeah, yeah.
Certainly, come from organizations like this. I think this organization exists in Michigan, like 2 hours away from me.
Oh.
Um, but I'd have to double check. I'm pretty sure one of their first events was happening in Detroit. But anyway, I'll find that out later. That's a
Logistics.
good name drop.
Yeah,
Radical Exchange without the E in front of exchange.
yeah, with an
Um,
X.
yeah. Radicalxchange.org for anybody who wants to look it up. Um, okay. El Salvador.
What do you
Earlier
want to know
this
about El
year,
Salvador?
President Nayib Bukele went to Bitcoin Miami, came home a Bitcoin fanboy. I think seems like that's more or less what happened, and got his government to approve a new law legalizing Bitcoin as legal tender, which was actually a world first. So, uh, I don't think it should have been the first cryptocurrency legal tender, but just because of how volatile it is. But at least it's something, and it's we're going somewhere with this. What are your thoughts on El Salvador's goal of becoming, I guess maybe in their words, the cryptocurrency capital of the world? I was
Yeah,
reading your piece,
that's
Brock
the
Pierce.
headlines words. Yeah,
Yeah,
Brock
Brock
Pierce.
Pierce certainly seems very, very bullish and has been spending a lot of time
I mean,
in El
is bullish in
Salvador. And
general, right? Is a
sure,
very
sure,
cheerful character.
but it seems
Uh,
to be putting his money where his mouth is. Like I think he was actually on the ground
Absolutely.
trying to
Yeah, he was.
help out. And we're a little bit past the implementation, according to Market Insider a few weeks ago. Actually, according to President Bukele, 2.1 million Salvadorians were using, or Salvadorans, sorry, were actively using the
Both
Chivo
forms are accepted.
wallet. Okay, good. um, all banks in El Salvador are, sorry, more people are using Chivo, the wallet app, than our bank customers in across all of El Salvador. That's 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks after the actual launch. Um, I heard some stories of merchants are just converting it back to U.S. dollars right away, which I think is perfectly fine and legit, and
Yeah,
honestly to be expected. But what's your sense or what's your opinion on what they're doing there, and what's your sense of how things are going so far?
well, I just found very strange how Bukele decided to soldier on despite what seemed to be a very uh, like strong opposition from the population. Right, there seemed to be a lot of discontent with the decision, mostly because of the perceived or real volatility of Bitcoin. Many people were worried, maybe because they were They didn't read enough about it, or maybe they were right. It depends really on. It really depends on the week when you're talking about it, about
This
the
week's
volatility of
pretty
Bitcoin.
good. Last
Exactly.
week,
Yeah. Yeah. So every week you might be right or wrong, but so there was all this worry about being paid in Bitcoin and Bitcoin crashing afterwards. So I'm sort of admired in a way. I'm sort of I find it at least inspiring how Bukele decided to just soldier on. I wonder why he was so keen on it. So what I've understood, speaking with people both in El Salvador, in general across Latin America, the Salvadorians might essentially Salvadorians don't really know what the kind. There's a sort of Schrodinger's Bukele. Bukele might be a modernizer, or he might be a crazy dictator. We don't really know until we
yeah,
open the box, and the box hasn't been opened. So he must be doing something that seems puzzling to everyone, including many Salvadorians, just to boost the economy, uh, cut or eliminate all transfer fees or remittances from abroad into the Salvadoran economy. There seemed to be one major thing he had in mind. So essentially removing all the fees paid or remittances into El Salvador. Uh, Attract a lot of people like Brock Pierce, if you wish. So entrepreneurs, Bitcoin miners, Bitcoin entrepreneurs, cryptocurrency, second layer app builders, and so boost the economy in some way and making it actually, as the headline said, the capital, the Bitcoin capital of the world. So if he's doing this despite resistance and perplexity, and despite a lot of questions, just because he has the vision to say it, I mean, all power to him. Uh, there is a kind of counter narrative there that he is either reckless or is doing it for all the wrong reasons. So essentially, to
right.
make El Salvador more appetizing for money launderers and criminals of all stripes. I understand, of course, Bitcoin is very often invidiously maligned as a cryptocurrency of money launderers and criminals. If you look at actual illicit transactions, they are a fraction of all Bitcoin transactions. But still, maybe Bukele doesn't know that. So we don't really know what we have, what we're dealing with, where we are dealing with a Marcus Aurelius, if you wish, an enlightened dictator, or Pol Pot. I don't really know what the worst kind of scenario might be here. For sure, he's not a big fan of democracy, is he? He has been crashing on their position. He has been jailing people who spoke out against Bitcoin. So the initial signs are not harbingers of a great kind of democratic reformer. They just seem a bit alarming. But still, that doesn't mean that he doesn't know what he's doing. He might not know what he's doing.
I find not all, most authoritarians, especially modern ones, they know exactly what they're doing. Sometimes that's really scary
Mm.
because they know exactly how to uh, uh, stack their parliament or their House of Congress with their buddies, which I, from my understanding, Nayib Bukele is not too far off from that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to then get those people to do all sorts of things that they want, like I think a dissenter in your article about the upcoming launch at the time rightfully pointed out that having a parliament that's very friendly to you, wipe the slate clean of judges and appoint a whole bunch of people who probably align with you politically, certainly problematic. This is,
Mm.
while I'm certainly bullish on non-fiat currencies being treated as legal tender, um, I do want it to be done in, I guess, what I would call in an appropriate way, in the sense that there should be vigorous debate. And while there might not be total consensus, a majority of people or a majority of parliamentarians, which represent the people, should, in good faith, be able to vote in favor of that change.
Would you have gone
And
to El Salvador to for the launch in order to? advertise
Would I
there
have
because I think
gone?
a lot of crypto people were there, but a lot of them were a bit conflicted about being there,
Yeah.
promoting the initiative because it sounded right, as you said, but also they realized that they were dealing with a character that some people might find unsavory for other reasons,
Yeah, and
unrelated to Bitcoin.
yeah, no, I have a conscience. Like, I'm sure other people think they have better morals than me, and that's fine. But I definitely do have a conscience, and I don't. I like this move. I don't like, attempts to make yourself to change a law that benefits you. Which in this case, I'm referencing the potential for Nayib Bukele to get the length presidential term length changed, right?
Mm,
Laws like that should only benefit the next person who comes into power. Voting
right.
for,
Your president.
and I see this happen at lower governmental levels at the time, all the time. Voting in favor of a raise for yourself as a politician, instead of just the next term, and that could be federal, provincial, municipal. I was on my municipal council here. The staff tried to justify it every time. I fought against it. 'Cause I'm like, I don't need this money. Like, this is, you're paying me, like $1,000 a month to be here. This is not, this is not how I'm paying my bills. This is like grocery money, and and I'm not doing it for the money. But they made their arguments, and I don't remember if I actually voted against it every time, but it didn't matter because I would have lost anyway. So I would have looked good in principle, but completely inconsequential. So if a move like that was only going to benefit the next president of El Salvador, sure, go for it.
Be careful, he
Especially
has many
assuming,
brothers who also are in politics. It's a whole clan.
which comes back to actual elections and whether they're being done properly and all the rest.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
if a legitimate election takes place, and more than 51% of, or more than 50.1% of people want one of Bukele's brothers or sisters to be
Yeah,
president,
yeah, absolutely. Why
fine.
not?
But and that but the election itself has to be legit, right? Like, that's what it really comes down to. And how you verify that, I don't know what El Salvador system's like. I went to elementary school with a refugee from El Salvador's crap they were going through in the 80s and early 90s. So I know he had no ambitions, and he and his mom had no ambitions to go back whatsoever anytime soon. Um,
Mm.
I think things are relatively better now, but regardless, like, growing up, that was the sense I got. Um, on the other hand, the government's decision, or Bukele's decision to buy 200 Bitcoin at, I think, average price 52.5, and then to buy a bunch more when it dipped down a few weeks ago. Right now, that's looking like a pretty smart decision. Like, it's,
Did you read the New
these.
York Times piece about where they keep them? Because there is doubt
No.
about where they actually keep them, and they say there is no essential official record of their buying them. What I understand is that they bought them over the counter.
Well, that's what I was assuming. Yeah, like, you wouldn't go to
Yeah,
Gemini or
you
Coinbase
will go
and
to
buy
Coinbase.
200 Bitcoin.
But yeah, but there are all these little questions about transparency, right? Well,
Sure.
why don't you publish online the receipt or whatever service you
There
use to
should be a
buy them?
wallet address. Like, this is the government's wallet, or
Check.
wallets. Like, these are our Bitcoin wallets, and here's a digital signature, right? Sign a message or something to say, like, I am
Example.
Nayib Bukele,
I'm Bukele.
or I'm the governor of
Please
the Bank of El
arise.
Salvador, or whatever. And
Yeah,
then at the end of the message, baller. Uh,
GM.
but this I don't know what has gone up 35. Yeah, like,
What
obviously
happened?
he's really. I'm looking through his tweets right now. He's
Yeah.
super bullish on holding Bitcoin, and according to the most recent article I can find, it's actually more than half the population now has actually downloaded the Chiva wallet. all of those people got $30 in Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's
Now,
important thing, right?
yes, yeah, everybody who lives in El Salvador and downloads the Chivo wallet gets $30 of Bitcoin. I don't know when that value was fixed, whether they when they launched or what have you. It could be
Good
more
question.
now, it could be more now, it could be less, or it could be at the time when you launch, we deposit $30 worth. Whatever that means,
Yeah,
at
I mean,
that particular
the
moment.
interesting figure there would be how many have deleted it after cashing out the $30. If we
Yeah,
got that figure,
sure.
we'd be able to actually assess the successfulness of the
Yeah,
initiative.
yeah. Um I was going to say one more thing about it, which was I still find it a really interesting experiment. I like that it happened because somebody needed to do it first. And
Mm-hmm.
until somebody does it first, we'll never know how it goes. Like
Mm-hmm.
I get really tired of economic theory being treated as gospel when and I know people who on the other side of a variety of topics who also feel the same way. Like, well, we don't know what a truly 100% capitalist society would look like. We don't know what, depending on whose vision of communism you actually agree with, what that looks like 100%, because nobody ever does anything 100%. So at the very least, from an experimental perspective, somebody did it, and there's a wallet available and there's infrastructure available. It could probably be better still, but they didn't wait for something perfect to come along, which I appreciate as well. And we're getting hopefully some real world usage and some data out of that. Not a ton. I want them to have relative privacy, regardless of what Chainalysis and other blockchain analytics companies can do these days. But somebody needed to be first. On the other hand, I'm totally sympathetic to the fact that it cost them a ton of money to do this, and some of that money could have been spent installing solar panels and batteries in a variety of locations around El Salvador to make sure people have power, and money could be spent to make sure people have running water in their homes and stuff like that. Like, I understand this is very much still a developing country, um, and whether this was money well spent will definitely remain to be seen at this point. That money could have been probably spent elsewhere first, but
Well, you can say that about everything, right? So
oh sure, yeah. But
it's
at
a
the same
usual
time,
thing.
this trove of what 350 bitcoins now that they own, if that goes back up to what was the high 72,000, buying it at 50 something, that's a pretty good buy. You could sell a bunch off,
It's a good
still
investment.
keep your initial dollar investment and use that money to help fund other infrastructure projects that could benefit people's daily lives at a more fundamental level, like power and water,
Mm. Yeah,
or the profits of it at
I don't
least.
know. The jury's out on that. We'll have to see, wait and see what happens there with the Bitcoin. I suppose that's the only reasonable answer.
Let's touch on the metaverse, because I think that seems to be where everybody
Mm.
wants to go. Everybody wants to make Ready Player One a reality, it seems like. And while I'm excited to play that for maybe 1 or 2 hours a day here and there, I definitely don't want to play it 24/7. But we have a variety of what I'll call blockchain native companies already headed in this direction. The Sandbox certainly seems to be literally trying to make Ready Player One happen, where they're licensing all these different intellectual properties in order to put them in their game. My only problem with that is it's going to be like voxels, and I'm like, I don't want voxels. I want like super high fidelity graphics. But regardless, there's companies like that who are actually trying to make that happen. Facebook bought Oculus, the VR hardware producers, a few years ago. Seems to be betting a lot of their time and money now on being the metaverse company, the host of the metaverse, or what have you. What are your thoughts on Zuckerberg announcing that? I guess Facebook is basically getting itself ready to be the metaverse company.
Yeah, I mean, you've already read my article in which I skewered that decision. Because I was just very worried. Maybe I was being a bit biased there. But when I listened to the announcement, which Zuckerberg made, I think, on the Verge podcast with Casey Newton, who was back to the Verge just for that story. It just sounded very boring. He kept talking about the enterprise, like the office, the metaverse, the office in the metaverse, working in the metaverse, meeting your colleagues in the metaverse, which is
No.
such a boring thing to even just consider. I mean, as you said, people want to buy to build Ready Player One, which is, I mean, I welcome that. I would love to engage in some kind of proxy war with shady corporations on the metaverse, right? Including Facebook, I'd say. But the idea that the metaverse should be harnessed to deliver what is essentially seeing the bloke across my desk as an avatar, as opposed to see a bloke across my desk as a bloke across my desk, is just mind-numbingly annoying and boring and unambitious. I think Zuckerberg should have said something much more ambitious. I realize that it's a multi-billion-dollar company. We can't really go there and say we want to create the oasis. But that really worries me. That the metaverse just becomes populated with this kind of half-assed projects, which are all about productivity and productivity the old way, right? Because you could theoretically say that the metaverse might foster an idea of productivity that is totally new. So you create economies within the metaverse, which, let's face it, is going to be a game economy, right? It's going to be something
Of course.
like gaming and getting paid in tokens, possibly, for gaming.
Yeah.
But it's still more than, again, the enterprise metaverse that Microsoft, apart from Zuckerberg, talked about. The enterprise metaverse, those two words juxtaposed just give me make me shiver. So yeah, it's just a very dire scenario, which we replicate what we already have and already do not enjoy in the metaverse. So this is my take.
Yeah, it feels oxymoronic, enterprise metaverse. Which to me always reminds me of what I find to be the ultimate oxymoron, which is Walmart culture. For anybody who's been to a Walmart, you probably know who I'm talking about. And if you don't, I don't maybe I've just offended you. But um it's just it's not two things that you think go together. And I don't I haven't even really had an actual taste of the current state of VR. My 12-year-old has a couple of times. I haven't yet. And but I'm ready to play games. I'm even ready to watch. Actually, what I would really like, and I've heard talked about before, is I will pay extra to sit in a virtual seat at a stadium.
Mm-hmm.
At a stadium that I probably can't normally get to, right? Like
Right.
Canada played Mexico for World Cup qualifying at the Azteca Stadium last night. The chances of me going to Azteca right now are very, very slim for a
Right.
variety of reasons, COVID among them. But it's also, well, Jesus, that's a lot of money for a soccer game, right? But let's say a ticket as at Azteca is $50. I'll pay $60, $70 to enjoy, or I'll pay the same ticket price for that you can resell hundreds of times to the exact same person for a 180 or 270-degree view um, of from that seat, and feel with the sound in my ears and the headset on, and feel more or less like I'm there. I'll pay extra for something like that. I think that would be a cool experience.
No, yeah, absolutely.
um
Scale, right? Scale of live events. You
yeah,
don't have 20,000 spectators, you have 20 million. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
why
for
not?
100%. And and I don't want it to be so disruptive that the players are like, oh crap, look at all these cameras. But like, you could have 4, 10, maybe 20 different positions across the stadium where 100 people, 200 people, 1,000 people can all get that view because the hardware's built for it. You have a good internet connection, and we're willing to pay for it. And we have the right hardware at home. But yeah, it's I don't want to spend all day in a virtual office
Yeah, the infinite office, that's what
interacting.
Zuckerberg called it.
The infinite office. Oh, great. So it never ends.
Yeah, sorry, just existential dread on my part.
On the other hand, I also don't want to end up in this space where everything's all goofy looking, right? Like I'm not coming to work dressed up, quote unquote, like a furry or an
So
alien or
choice.
anything like that. It's just it's not my thing. And if that's the vision that some people have, then you better have nameplates across across everybody's avatar, because I'm not going to remember that you were an alien yesterday and you're a dog today and a magic mirror tomorrow or whatever. Like this is that's humans do really well recognizing faces, and once you take that away, I think you end up with with the same thing that trolls feel like they can get away with, where everybody's anonymous,
Mm,
and the words you say and type online don't matter because it's just a faceless person on the other end. I want to see
mm,
people's faces. um and there's some really good avatar builders now that are available that you could mess around with and be like, that's more or less me. Great,
right.
go to work. If that's if that's really what we're gonna, I'm not gonna do that. But like, it, I think there's lots and lots of opportunities that could augment real world experiences or enhance real world experiences that you might not be able to do otherwise. And of course the gaming aspect, and that's all cool. I
Yeah.
remember a couple of years ago, I think when the HTC Vive first came out, they had all these, or maybe the first Oculus, they had all these artists demonstrating, like painting in the air and being able to make these really cool 3D uh, um, structures out of digital paint. I'm just thinking, why aren't those being like, that would be a really cool thing to mint as an NFT, put it in a museum somewhere, and make that part of that experience, so that it's not even just a 2D image or a spinning 3D video. You could actually have like a sculpture sitting there that somebody's made in 3D and turned into an NFT, and is part of a curated collection or something like that.
Yeah.
Sushi is about to release Show You, which actually looks really cool. So like this, I'm just remembering now, like things 5 6 years ago that I remember seeing, and I'm like, oh, that's a really cool demo. Let's bring that back and include that in the metaverse instead of going to the infinite office.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm all for uh, virtual sculptures as opposed to an infinite desk or whatever. Yeah, that's why I penned that very venomous article against Zuckerberg's
Was that
ambition.
an article or an op-ed?
It was a kind of op-ed, right? It was clearly a column. There was really no reporting. I was just very angry.
You had a blog or people had blogs, right? They started using blogs for venting the things that were not going to be journalistic pieces, or journalists started doing that. Instead, you wrote a column. It's fine, total, and you probably got it included in Wired UK print or something like
And
that, so you
no, it
could.
was in UK and .com. Yeah, it wasn't in the magazine. It was just
Oh, that's too
impromptu,
bad.
sadly.
Well, hopefully lots of people read it and agreed, because I certainly agree.
Good.
Gian, thank you so much for taking some time on this afternoon to spend time with me here on Private Podcast. It was a lot of fun. If people want to read more of the stuff you're putting out there, where should they go?
Wired website. Also, my Twitter account, which is uh, at GM Volpi, like the first 5 letters of my surname.
Okay, GN
M
like
like
Nancy.
no, M like Maria.
Okay, GM like Maria, Volpi, Volpi.
Right, that's
Terrific.
all.
Thanks again for being here, and for everybody listening at home. Until next time, stay free.